you like to say you're an investigative reporter, but you also like to have a discussion. You also like to brainstorm, you know?
That's part of being a reporter. I'm bringing what I find and then bouncing it off you guys. See if you agree. There's no reason to disagree. I'm not making stuff up. And when I am, I'll say it's my opinion. I'm covered all around.
So here's a good question for us, why we let people flow in. How long does it take you, Rab, to go from something to be, maybe debatable in your eyes to something that you start to accept and agree upon? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, there's so much out there. There's so many different opinions to do one thing, and you like to break it down. But when does it come to the point where you're like, okay, you know what? I'm settled on this issue. I'm going to accept this now.
I don't make a class or a lecture that someone else has spoken about from the perspective that I agree with. I only make a class or a lecture when my perspective hasn't been represented. When I feel that I must chime in just for the sake of Judaism, not that I'm necessarily trying to destroy the other position, but just to throw another position into the mix. There's different ways to do Judaism, especially the areas that aren't set in stone. And if I could contribute to that diversity, then I'm all for it. Because I know there's a lot of guys who get depressed when they hear a mystical rabbi teach Judaism in a way that doesn't really speak to them. So they walk away thinking this is all Judaism has to offer. So then I think that I bring a rational perspective to the table to cater to a certain audience. They feel like, you know what, Judaism is still for me. It's not this way or nothing, the Hasidic approach or the Sephardic approach or the Litvak approach. No, there's many different approaches. The difference is many of those approaches aren't found on social media. So that's how I feel that I contribute to Jewish life. Whenever I learn something new that I don't see taught, that's when I get up and try to make a video first. So then I could say, hey, look at the timestamp of my video. I spoke about that before all you guys. It makes me feel like I'm making a difference. Yeah.
You're bringing something to the table. Yeah.
Something new to the table. Some people who teach Torah have no issue just repeating the same things over and over again. And it's fine. There's an audience for that. That's actually the bulk of people who learn. They need repetition, and you don't only need teachers who are incisive. Being a normative Jew is very important. Having a rabbi who's just going to teach you normal Judaism is also very important. That's just not my strength, but I'm not shooting those people down. A sense of normalcy is very necessary. 100 years from now, everything I'm saying in my lectures today are going to seem normal. I'm not against rabbis who just repeat what the halacha is, what the law is, the historical narrative. That's all very necessary. It's just not something that draws my attention. I don't feel that's how I contribute to Judaism. For something to really motivate me to make a video, it has to be something that is not being taught, but exists. I mean, I have personal opinions too, but I don't think any video I make just based on my personal opinion is very groundbreaking. But I love finding a piece in the Gemara and the Mishnah that people have forgotten about, or the big rabbis forgot about, and just kind of bring it back and see how we can incorporate it with our other laws. And perhaps if it challenges a modern day practice, even better, like statements of Rav Tzadok Gaon attacking Kabbalistic ideas. That's something that's probably less than 100 years old in terms of being popular. That many of his works were in Arabic. Virtually the bulk of Jewish works that exist in English were translated in the last 40 years. Right. So throughout Jewish history, if you didn't know Hebrew, you were lost. So we're living in interesting times, and everyone could contribute. You don't even need to know Hebrew that well. Just knowing it a little bit could start translating. Like most Yeshiva Bachers who study Torah and Gemara all day, like in Eretz Yisrael, perhaps don't even speak fluent Hebrew, but they're able to translate. They're able to understand what they're reading. Understanding Hebrew contextually is not the same as being fluent in Israeli Hebrew. So don't be disheartened.
Which is easier? Is biblical Hebrew easier to learn as opposed to actual like conversational Hebrew, or vice versa?
You mean written conversational Hebrew versus written biblical Hebrew?
Correct.
Written conversational Hebrew, it's much easier because it follows rules. Biblical Hebrew doesn't necessarily follow rules, and you need almost a preconceived understanding of what that word in that pasuk is actually speaking about. Many times there's words that are misspelled or have an extra letter. For sure, modern day Hebrew is much easier. Like if you're going to translate a book from a modern day commentator versus books like Shulchan Aruch or even the Rambam, although Mishneh Torah is written in simple Hebrew compared to the way other Rishonim wrote, it's still not as simple as modern day Hebrew. People deny it, but there's a lot of Aramaic in Mishneh Torah as well. And I mean, forget about Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch has a lot of Aramaic in it also. But modern day Hebrew is a lot easier to understand. Yeah.
Is that why it's challenging for like a Torah reader to like read through the Sefer Torah during service?
Anyone who lanes has to practice basically all week. And it's not just to know where the nakudos go, but for the trope. Technically, you don't need a trope. You don't need to have the cantorial notes. It's part of our tradition, like a minhag to do it. That's really what people practice. The average fluent Hebrew-speaking Israeli, if you put him up to lane from a Sefer Torah, he's going to misread probably 60% of the words. But they read without nakudos all the time. Israeli newspapers don't have nakudos necessarily. Now, there's some that do. For Olim, it's not the issue of nakudos. It's just the Torah doesn't follow the Hebrew rules of grammar instituted by Eliezer ben Yehuda, I believe. Right, is his name? With a guy who like.
What would be the rational approach? What would you take for all the misspellings and all the errors in the written Torah? Is there, because I know from a Kabbalistic perspective answers to that. Why Yaakov is spelt with sometimes the two yuds, because it's like he's like getting an extra soul or something.
There's different variations in Sifrei Torah. I know that many of the Condemnation rabbis won't acknowledge this, because they're like, oh, the Torah is perfect, nonsense. Even with other books, especially with other books. I remember like my friend ordered a Megillah Sester, to read in Purim, but he ordered one written on Javil, or Jawil, I guess, which is like the Yemenite custom to write it on the thick leather cloth, and it had an extra letter, or is it like an extra letter or an extra word, just because they had their own tradition of writing their Megillahs, which differed from traditional Sephardi and Ashkenazi way of doing it. Also, Sifrei Torah, some of them have different spellings. I'm not saying there's an extra word, but there's for sure extra letters. I'm pretty sure that it was errors throughout the years, throughout the centuries. Although we have a halacha that if you're going to copy a Sefer Torah, you have to copy it from another Sefer Torah. Even with that, there's errors in it.
So there was no one from the Talmud or anything like that might have spoken on something to that effect.
All these things about why does Bereshit start with a big bet, right? All that is really late in Jewish history, mainly in Achronim. In the time of the Talmud, I'm pretty sure that all these big letters, small letters didn't really exist.
But it's peculiar, though. I mean, don't you think it's kind of random that there are like in the middle of like the book of Numbers, I think there's like exclamation points, and then they say, well, this is because it's like a secret book, and there's really technically 7 books of the Torah, not 5, and there's reasons for that. And then they'll say, this was the song that they sung when they, but there's nothing like that you're saying. It's interesting.
No, I'm not saying there's nothing like that. I'm just not aware of it. But for sure, like Sifrei Torah back then would have looked different than Sifrei Torah today. So all these little insights brought down by the commentators, you're talking about the Middle Ages. If you compare the Dead Sea Scrolls, the way they were written back then, it doesn't really match up with the way Sifrei Torah looked today. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, you guys could double check on this, if they're crowns in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because I don't think they are. Now, clearly, the notion of crowns on the letters of the Torah appear in the Talmud, but they don't appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says in the Talmud that these crowns were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, but it appears in such an obscure medrash because it says that Moses is taken to a yeshiva where Rabbi Akiva is teaching this concept, that the student asks Rabbi Akiva, where did these crowns come from? And then Rabbi Akiva says these crowns are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That means they were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. But Moses was sitting in the back of the room and he said, I never received it. All right, so I don't know if that's supposed to be comedy, but it seems that sometimes people give answers that aren't accurate, but for some reason they're tolerable in the community, like lies that are acceptable, like the notion of halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that something was actually given to Moses apart from what actually appears in the Torah. I'm giving you the example of this, but I don't think it tells you. Well, first of all, the whole system for writing these crowns are not uniform. Ashkenazim have different from Sephardim. I'm pretty sure that what the Tanaim and the Amoraim had doesn't resemble what people use nowadays. But in terms of significance, yes, it helps you with the trope, but I don't think there's anything else to that. Now, there's Kabbalists who put significance on everything, but I don't think it stems from the Talmud.